Hello, my name is Paul Reeder. Welcome to this presentation titled Marketing Transformation, State of the Industry and How You Can Lead Change. You can learn more about me by visiting my website at paulreeder.com or by following me at Twitter, following Paul Reeder. Let's get started. First, let's look at the current state of the marketing industry and how a number of the current practices followed by professional marketers is in fact broken. To do that, let's first think about the fact that advertising is truly ubiquitous. No matter where you live, no matter which city in the world you call home, advertising is now becoming more unavoidable. So it's in every location, whether it's in your online experience, whether it's in your day-to-day experience out in the world, or even if it's in your experience going to the bathroom, it seems. So we see about 3,000 messages a day on average. And as a result of that, now certain channels of communication are becoming particularly problematic. So junk mail is one of them. And if you look at some of the statistics here, particularly for the United Kingdom, and the same would hold true for other parts of the world, then the average person, and of course this would be much higher if you lived in a major city like London or New York and so on, but the average household receives over 200 pieces of junk mail every year. And I'd say in major cities it's probably multiple pieces of junk mail per day. What that means is that the percentage of waste in terms of papers that are coming into the home not even being read or paid attention to, just being put into the recycling bin or even worse into the garbage, is a waste. And all of the resources that are going into producing this material is a huge impact on the environment, sadly, and on our landfills. So this is happening within the marketing organization. We rely heavily on the direct mail industry in order to try to influence households to consider buying products and services that the companies we work for have to sell. And the next thing is, of course, is email as well. And some of these cartoons suggest ingest some of the severity of this particular issue, but you can see the one cartoon on the left says, "Ever since they've installed the spam filter, I haven't had a single letter." And in fact, it's not far from the truth. So if you look at sources such as Symantec, well over 90% of all emails sent globally are actually spam. So what does that tell you? It tells you that individual proprietors, but probably more influentially professional marketers, are unfortunately utilizing lists that are being compiled, and they're sending messages to people who may or may not have opted in, and also probably isn't relevant to what it is that they're looking for. So email spam is a reality of our existence. And as a result of some of these things that are happening within the industry, consumers are starting to be more and more resistant to the things that they're experiencing. So on the one hand, in the email or the digital world, you've got an entire class of technology has emerged, whether it be in the image on the left indicating you're utilizing something like a Hotmail or Google and so on. They've got built-in spam filters now to try to identify emails that you wouldn't have requested or probably don't want to receive, and automatically handling those for you. And there's entire systems now where you can buy different software packages, and there's corporate firewall and systems like Barracuda and so on that are built in order to support the corporation and protecting itself against spam as well. So 80% of us are annoyed by spam, and there is a building resistance around trying to handle that. And there's a resistance in result to the paper world, to the direct mail approach to marketing as well. And I've traveled a great deal of the world, and I imagine a lot of you have also. And as you are going around different streets, you've probably noticed, or maybe it hasn't even been raised to the front of your consciousness, but if you do now go and walk along any street in the world, in any city, you will find in every language these placards or stickers on people's front doors saying, stop, we don't want junk mail, stop sending us things that we haven't requested, no print advertising direct to my home. So 70% of consumers are annoyed by this and they want it to stop. And they're showing that resistance very clearly and demonstrably by having these types of messages on the front of their homes. And if you take this to the telemarketing world, then there's been a reaction or a resistance building in that sphere of marketing also. So if you look at research that's been done by Amplicate, then they did a research and they found that 90% of people, they don't dislike telemarketing, they actually hate it. So 90% of people hate telemarketing, and not only that, but governments are responding to this uprising of people's discontent by establishing national do-not-call registries. So they're creating mechanisms by which you as a consumer can call in, register your telephone number, so that in the future, marketers, it is illegal for them to call that number in order to try to reach you to sell their products or services. So there is this upswell of resistance in relation to telemarketing also. And all of this mass marketing that's happening that is done with disregard to how it impacts and may disgruntle the public is resulting in legislation being looked at or being developed or being implemented around different parts of the world. And if you look at the EU Privacy Directive, then that's an example of this in action. So various different countries around the world, the people have spoken, the people are speaking their discontent, and governments are now responding, trying to decide how they're going to protect people's identities and protect their data so that marketers will stop misutilizing that data in order to continue these practices that are causing a large amount of unhappiness in the public at large. So this is the reality of marketing practices that are being utilized and what the impact and resistances that are emerging as a result of those practices. And it's what's the source of that then? Like why out of all of the options and vehicles and tools that exist in a marketer's toolkit, then why is it that they're continuously doing those things that are frustrating and infuriating the public and actually in the longer term making things more difficult for themselves? Well, it's because there's this batch and blast mentality or a mass marketing mindset. So the visual on your screen here is about an interactive marketing calendar. Well, what is an interactive marketing calendar? What's a marketing calendar? Well, in its basic form, a marketing calendar is just simply a way for marketers to think about when is it that they're going to launch a particular marketing campaign or a particular communication. In other words, what they do in order to come up with this is they think, look, I've got to come up with a campaign. Now, there's several triggers for that campaign. Either I need to grow revenue, or maybe based on analysis, there's a decline of sales for a particular product service, or they've got certain growth targets that have been determined by the business, and marketing needs to support that business plan. So there are these internal triggers within the business in order to come up with reactionary plans in order to try to hit those targets or objectives. And then the marketing organization springs into action in order to design these campaigns that will be implemented at certain periods of time. And they plan it out over the course of the year, and then they put those things into the calendar. So what happens, let's say, January 15th, they're going to launch a particular campaign. And on January 15th, there's going to be ads, and there's going to be outbound communications, and there's going to be direct mail, and there's going to be email, and there's going to be all of these various components of a campaign that are going to launch not according to the consumer's actions or interest, but according to when the marketing team and when the business deems it prudent in order to launch those things according to their business. In other words, it's an inside-out view of marketing. It's my timeline versus the consumer's buyer's experience, and that's what's causing this disconnect. And furthermore, the tools that are available for marketers are all designed around this approach to marketing, and the people who have been trained and are working either within corporate marketing departments or within agencies have come to learn that this is the way that things are done. So now these practices are entrenched. This is the way the world works, and it's causing big problems. So how is marketing changing? Well, the thing is that marketing is changing as a result of the digitization of the online purchase and research experience. So let's just very quickly walk through a typical experience. And now this could be an experience for an individual consumer who is doing research to buy a car or a bicycle or a television, or it could be for a group of people that work within a business who are seeking to buy a product or service to help them address some business needs that they've got. So in this particular example, let's look at an individual within a business who's going to have to work with a number of their colleagues in order to make a purchase decision about some tools. So we've got an individual within a business, and that person is responsible for their website. And in particular, they're responsible for the analytics part of the website. And so what they've done is they have gone out there, and obviously they do a little bit of research, and they find out information about things that exist in terms of that domain, the tools, and what the challenges of other people who have that same responsibility are and how they're dealing with it and so on. And in fact, me as this individual who has this responsibility in the company, I go out there and I'm participate in conferences and so on. It's because of this area of responsibility, and I go to this Web Trends, which is a vendor, a technology vendor. I go to this event and I listen to what they have to say, and that spurs some thoughts within my mind about potential things that I could be doing better in order to improve the results that I'm contributing to my business. So I go to this event, and afterwards I come back to my employer and I start having conversations with my manager, and I say, look, I think that I could improve what we're able to do if we had some better analytics tools. And so you have that conversation, and you say, look, could I go out there and could I look at what our options are and see if there's a business case in order to bring this back into our business in order to improve what we're doing? And it's likely then that research begins. So then people within the business, myself and maybe others, start to go out there and you start doing keyword combinations. So you start to imagine what it is that I need and what are the words that I can enter into a search engine in order to find things that relate to what it is that I need. So you go to Google and Bing and other search engines and so on, and you do these searches. And you come up with results, and then you click on those results in order to read what it is that they have to say to see if it's going to lead you down to a path towards a solution. And as you know, as a digital marketer, then you're probably a good number of those links are going to link actually to social media content sources. So blogs, for instance. So I'm going to read blogs, and I'm going to learn lessons from other people who have gone before me and people who analyze that sector of the software space, and I'm going to read what they have to say. And this is going to be an input into my thinking. And as I do that, then I'm going to start to see, well, what are the actual options that are available to me that I could select from as a solution to what we're trying to do. And once I start to narrow down the number of options that I've identified, then I'm going to their particular web presences to do further research. So I'm going in, and in this particular case, I'm researching the Web Trends option, and I'm starting to analyze the information that's been presented to me on their website. I'm also then starting to think about how information is presented to me. So the way that information is presented to me, in other words, the effectiveness of the marketer in being able to first understand my mindset, my needs, my information needs, considering the stage I'm at in the buying process, and then thinking about how that information or that data needs to be presented back to me in order to understand and navigate through that buying process is part of the digital experience. So I'm also, however, looking at different mobile devices. I'm accessing information on my way home in the bus or the tube on my mobile phone. I'm utilizing my iPad in front of the television at home, and not only am I using mobile devices in order to conduct my buying research, but I'm expecting that the tools that I'm buying or the solutions that I'm buying to be mobile enabled as well. And as I'm going further into the depth of figuring out of the short list of options which ones are going to best suit my needs, I'm drilling further into more in-depth detailed content. So things like white papers, things like social communities. So what groups or communities exist that are specifically focused on this topic of interest that I have, and what are those social sources of information, or what are those groups of people saying about the things that I'm looking at. And then as a result of all of this information, I'm coming back to my business, and I'm presenting my findings to the other people who are influencers in making the purchase, and then they're asking me questions. So there's the technical people, for example, are saying, well, is it made with this code, and will it integrate with this, and what kind of database is it based on, and all of these types of technical questions, of which I have very little concern about because I'm just the business user. But other influencers within the company, these are their dominant concerns. So all of a sudden I have a new set of factors that need to be taken into account in the research, and those individuals are going out and they're doing different types of research. So different people have different roles in the buying process, and as a result of those different roles, they have different information requirements, and they're all conducting the different aspects of their research, and they're pulling this back into the business. And that person is going out and figuring out, the technical person is doing the same thing. So they're going to the social sphere, they're going to Twitter, they're looking at blog content. The technical person is actually watching webinars to figure out the technical architecture and all of these types of things of the solution, and figuring out whether it's the right thing. And then the technical person, the IT person, comes back to me and said, actually, okay, I've done my research. It seems based on our requirements that the solution that you've identified is actually a pretty good fit. So I'm getting the head nod from the IT department. But then we've agreed with each other that it's the right solution, but now there's other players come into the mix. So we've got a business case, but now the finance guy is coming into the picture, and we need to go and ask for funds. We've got our business case, and we're saying, well, can we go out and can we utilize some of our cash resources in order to invest in this solution? Well, obviously then there's another group of people who have their own concerns, and research continues for that individual. And then they're going to salespeople, for example, who are figuring out that we've got a finance person who actually makes the decision. They can see that something has happened in the digital interactions, and the salesperson is actually reaching out and having a phone call with the decision maker and asking them questions about what it is that they're seeking and how can they help. And so it's a very timely conversation that's happening. The person who is doing the research doesn't actually know necessarily everything that's happened behind the scenes, but actually it's very well timed because it's being triggered by this online behavior. So the salesperson is engaged with the decision maker, and the decision maker, based on being assisted by the consultative salesperson, comes to the conclusion that it's actually worthwhile to make this investment. But then the individual marketing person, who is responsible for another area of the business, is responsible for RSS, let's say, for example. They're concerned because they think that this investment may result in taking some of their budget. And so all of a sudden you've got other influencers on the decision who are not necessarily proponents but could be detractors. And so this comes into play as well. So now we've got a detractor who's going to go out there and actually try to fight this decision, and because it's in their best interest to keep the budget that they've been spending on something else intact. So they're going out there and they're actually looking for reasons not to do this. And they're going to every different resource in order to find what those reasons are, and then that's coming back into the business. So the bottom line is that it's a complex digital experience. And marketing isn't about the marketing organization's timeline any longer. It's about the buyer, and the buyer is the one who is triggering the experience. The buyer is the ones that's setting the journey. And as marketers, we need to recognize the fact that it's complicated. Even in a consumer purchase, you could have various different family members or friends and so on that are actually influencing this decision following a very similar process. And marketing practices actually has to change to adapt to the reality of the buyer experience. So, how can marketing automation change the game? Let's look at that for a moment. At the very beginning, we talked about some of the things that were problematic about current marketing practices. And those things are represented by the bottom of this pyramid. You've got a batch and blast mentality, an inside-out mentality. The most advanced organizations are taking things a step further and saying, hold on a second, we're better than that. We've done research, we've developed personas through customer research, we've figured out their information needs based on that customer research. We've got, therefore, niche segments, and by the way, most large organizations have between 4 to 6 segments. And so therefore what they've done is they've gone up beyond batch and blast, and now they've got 4 to 6 segments, and now they're just doing mass marketing to 4 to 6 segments, but they're calling that customer driven because they've tried to give some thought to how different groupings of customers or decision makers will have different information needs, requirements, and interests, and they're trying to adapt their marketing approach to that. But really, that's not where marketing maturity is heading. Where marketing maturity is heading is towards one-to-one and inevitably to true personalization. Now, when we started at the beginning, some of the reasoning behind that not having happened yet is because the technology didn't previously exist in order to enable it. Obviously, in order to live this true personalization promise of delivering only the right message with the right information at the right time via the right channel that is suiting the interests of the buyer, not suiting the desires or the choices of the marketer, that's only possible if there's underlying technology that's able to learn about the individual and to be able to adapt the buyer experience in real time based on what we know about that individual. So that's where we're heading, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't been able to, as marketers, live up to this nirvana of marketing, is because the underlying technology wasn't previously available. The good news is now it is available. So as a result of the underlying technology being available, now we need to think about the buyer's experience and the content that's suited to each stage of the journey. If you think about each individual persona or person or type of individual, then those types of individuals go through steps of a buying experience. And you can almost think in terms of a matrix. You can think, okay, well, if you create a list of people on the left-hand side who are the different types of people that may be engaged in a buying experience, and you think about the stages of the buying experience along the top, going from left to right, then you can create a matrix that says, okay, well, for this individual at the beginning of this process, they're going to have these types of needs. And then you can think about your content strategy that way. So it's possible to think about a content strategy that is truly oriented around the buyer and the buyer experience. And that is where we need to take our marketing practices in order to support this marketing automation approach to doing things. So we do that, and we also need to think of the fact that, look, we all lie when we're online. I call it predictive answering. So we lie because we know when marketers are asking for information that it's going to be used against us. In a sense, like we know that when information is being collected on a form, that let's take the buyer horizon. So you say, well, are you interested in this product or service, this one and this one and this one? You have to pick. And it says, well, within what time frame are you thinking of buying this particular product or service? And there's 0 to 3 months, and 3 to 6 months, and 6 to 9 months, and 9 to 12 months, and so on. Well, what are you going to pick if you're an individual who doesn't want to talk to a salesperson? Well, you're going to pick 12 months and later, as long as possible. Because if you say, well, I'm going to buy within 3 months, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a phone call from someone you don't want to speak to. So the bottom line here is that as consumers, we know that all of this information is being collected about us. And we have a fear or skepticism, a concern that information that we're providing is going to be used against us to create an experience that actually we don't want to have. And so we all lie. And what does that mean? It means basically that we can't trust the information. We can't trust the information that people are giving us when they're answering and entering information into forms, or even telling us things we're talking to them on the phone. But what we can trust is their behavior, because behavior doesn't lie. So as we think about the buyer experience over time, then we can actually now, as a result of web analytics technologies, we're able to look at that journey over time. We're able to look at how many web pages is it that they're looking at. We're able to look at what content are they actually consuming. We're looking at how many times and how many channels of content are they actually engaging with. And as a result of doing that, we can visualize what the buyer experience looks like for each individual buyer. And this is an incredible advancement in terms of marketing technology. But this information can be used in a couple of different ways. First, it can be used to enable the sales organization. So as we said previously, telemarketing, 80% or 90% of people actually hate telemarketing. What people don't mind, however, is if you help them find the solutions that they've already tried to find answers to. So what we're showing here is the fact that in the slide previous, we had the buyer's journey and we had the digital interactions of an individual being illustrated along that buyer's journey. Well, now we can package up that information and we can display it inside a CRM system, in this particular case Salesforce.com, and we can take all of that information and we can actually create a list for a salesperson so they can see, okay, well, who are the people who are actually engaged in their own buyer's research, and based on the actions or interactions that person and the content that person is consuming, who actually needs to speak to someone. And therefore, I can, as a salesperson, I can prioritize my time in order to simply reach out to, engage, and support those people who are already showing an interest in buying something. So it transforms the sales experience as well as the approach to marketing. It transforms the sales experience because now salespeople are thinking in terms of enabling the buyer, and they're able to utilize this marketing intelligence in order to plan who it is that they're going to speak to and what is it they're going to say in order to make that touch point with the prospective buyer a positive one for the consumer. Now the next thing is, well, how do we change the way we can communicate with the buyer? And really what we do now is instead of thinking in terms of a marketing calendar and when things are going to happen, we think in terms of experiential flows. And here's an example of what an experiential flow would look like for the marketing operations person who's creating these things. So they're creating various different steps, and some of the steps are communications that would occur, and some of the steps are deciding what action should take based on what we know about the individual buyer or consumer, given where they are in the buyer's experience. And we can start to now also respect not only the fact that we want to help a buyer simply move forward with their buyer experience rather than mass market to people and annoy them and frustrate them and create all the problems that we talked about at the beginning, but we can also respect how they engage with content and which channels of communication that they choose to utilize themselves. So the top right hand corner here, for example, is showing various different applications and systems that people may interact with as part of their digital online research. And the marketing systems now have the ability to actually connect out to these various different systems and optimize the buyer experience by either personalizing the experience on those other systems as they engage with them, or by bringing information into the core marketing platform and utilizing that information in order to optimize the customer experience to create a delightful, positive experience because it's personalized for me as the consumer. And And the third aspect of building a marketing program on the buyer's understanding is obviously learning what you're doing. And by learning what we're doing through the measurement of marketing, most marketing organizations are viewed by the business as a cost center. And marketing executives are under an increasing amount of pressure in order to prove the value of marketing to the organization. So by moving in this direction of being able to take a digital orientation towards marketing that is honoring the buyer and honoring the buyer journey that people are going on, orienting the entire content strategy around that buyer experience, and then stitching together technologies in order to automatically personalize and optimize each consumer's experience. Because that's all happening within integrated technologies, the marketer will now have the ability to see what's working, what's not working, and be able to not only measure what's happened in the past, but based on predictions, being able to then trends, be able to determine where they should change things, optimize things, spend more money in certain areas, spend less money in other areas, in order to optimize the return on investment to the company that the marketer serves. Now, you might be wondering, how does all of this relate to what might be called CRM? Well, CRM is really a term that's been associated with Salesforce automation, actually. So companies that are like Salesforce.com and SAP and Microsoft with Dynamics and Oracle and so on, these organizations have a legacy in beginning with the Salesforce automation component. And if you look at the buyer's journey or the funnel, if you might want to think about it that way, the right end of the funnel is really the end of the buyer's journey. So once the sales gets leads and then sales is engaged with prospects or customers and then they move them towards a close, that was traditionally what technologies did in the category of CRM or Salesforce automation. But of course, the thing that we've just talked through now is much broader than that. So it includes the entire buyer experience from very first, even before someone is a known individual, all the way through to becoming a customer and even supporting the customer through their life cycle. So this notion of a marketing cloud, a technology framework that supports the entire customer experience, is something that we need to now move towards and really think about how that works. So as a potential customer, so a corporation who is trying to move towards this approach to marketing and sales alignment, here are the typical stages that they're going to go through. So the first step is that they are probably focusing on sales management. So because Salesforce automation and CRM systems have been around and have been adopted much more rapidly and they're a higher stage of maturity, it makes sense then that most organizations started with CRM or sales management. And once they optimized and professionalized and systematized the CRM or the Salesforce automation component of their business, then they were able to turn their attention to demand generation. So how could they work with their marketing organization to optimize the performance of their demand generation function? So they started to work on more campaigns and creating a marketing system that would focus on building demand for the business. But as they did that, then obviously you can't just build more demand without figuring out how to better handle the leads that are the leads that come in as a result of that demand generation effort. So the next stage of that is you need to deal with the issues of generating more demand. So we go out there, we're generating more demand, but how do we optimize the way that we handle the leads that we create for the business in order to maximize the results and optimize the customer experience through that process. Now, as a business evolves through these stages, then there's the ability to link together the data that's being created by marketing and the data that exists in other parts of the business. So, for example, in the sales management and the Salesforce automation side, and possibly with other aspects of the business as well, so services and support and so on. And so organizations at stage 4 are really trying to think, okay, well, how can we blend the data and metrics that exist within all of these other aspects of the business in order to create what we might call one view of the truth. In other words, to make sure that data that historically was siloed And the result was that the managers responsible for different parts, the functional parts of the business, had different data that didn't necessarily agree with each other, and they had different metrics that weren't necessarily aligned, or to create a holistic story that the higher up executives could really trust in order to make forward decisions about how to manage the business. So stage 4 is really about how to resolve all of that. And then after that happens, then we can look at revenue performance management. In other words, making decisions about how to optimize the operation of the business. So what's the opportunity for you? And something just briefly to leave you with is how does the customer value things? So where does the value for the customer actually come from? And this is from the perspective of a marketing technologist or a service provider. So that's what we're looking at here. And this graphic here I created to help marketing technologists and service providers see themselves within a holistic framework. Now, you've got a line in the middle, and you've got a bottom half and a top half. Now let's start at the bottom. So first of all, results and success, that's about the customer having a positive experience, about having a positive brand experience and an optimized customer experience, and that also turning into revenue for the corporation that invested in optimizing the customer experience. Now, obviously, those success or that results, those results come as a result of utilizing various technologies. As we said before, you can't move towards true personalization without utilizing underlying technology that optimizes each individual consumer's experience. So therefore, the success happens as a result of individuals having touch points with a company that is enabled by technology platforms. Now, in order for the platforms to function effectively, to move up this pyramid, obviously then there needs to be an execution of utilizing those platforms, of customizing them, about setting them up and so on, in order to maximize the results that we get out of the bottom of it, which requires technical skills. So you have to have the technical skills of the various technologies in order to execute the implementation and configuration setup and utilization of the platform in order to get the results. But in order to deliver these, utilize the technical skills, you first have to have a tactical plan. So how are you going to use the technologies intentionally in order to get the results that you're after and create the customer experience that you're intentionally wanting to create? But in order to have that tactical plan, first you have to have a strategy. And in order to come up with a strategy, first you need to have the business knowledge, best practices, and truly a vision. A vision of what it is you're trying to accomplish in the business, a vision of what's possible with technology, a vision of what kind of customer experience that you want to create that best supports the brand and is most likely to create a optimal customer experience. And so that's the way that things layer on top of each other. The thing is now, though, the value of the services, if you're a services organization, can deliver, actually increase the higher up you go in this inverted pyramid. And the business value, however, is the opposite way around. So the lower you go towards success, the higher the business value. And obviously, there's a degree of technical awareness and knowledge that is required, looking at the platform capabilities or what's possible, text on the right-hand side. In order to move from the vision and strategy down to execution, there needs to be a certain degree of technological awareness and appreciation in order to know, like, what is actually possible, and how can those possibilities be selected in order to create a vision and a strategy that can be implemented. So you might ask yourself, if you're a technologist or if you're a service provider, what kind of organization are you? Where do you specialize? Are you specialized really on the bottom half? Are you a technology-driven organization that is a bit more reactive to requests for information and RFPs, and what you're doing then is you're simply answering those requests for information, and then you're acting as technical experts, implementing the solutions, configuring the systems, customize a platform, and then outsourcing things? Well, if that's the case, then you're only delivering on half of the required services that need to be delivered in order to truly deliver value or results to the corporation and to the consumer, because the top half is really the most important half, which is how can you act in a business value driven way? How can you ask questions that are going to elicit from the company the various different options they have, come up with the vision, and then discover the problems, prioritize those problems, and then truly act as an advisor to propose solutions, guide decision making, and deliver the solution. So, or how can you as an organization work in combination with other organizations in order to provide this holistic approach that's absolutely necessary in order to transform the way as marketing is done, in order to live the promise of that true personalization or true personalized experience that we're talking about. In closing, what kind of opportunity exists within this space? Well, if you look at the automation portion of marketing transformation, and if you look at the maturity of the industry, where do you think it lies today? Well, if you look at consider the research that we have at our disposal, then in actual fact the maturity of this space is at about 15% penetration. So we're still very early days, and being able to understand the way that marketing is moving towards, and being able to figure out how you can be a contributor to this movement obviously means that you can be part of the wave that is happening in terms of changing the way that marketing is done. And the second part of this, which is the more analytics side of things, the numbers side of things, and the business side, where you're able to make decisions and predict how to adapt to what's working, what's not working, and how to invest to optimize the results for the business. Where do you think that is in terms of maturity? Well, as we look at our understanding of that particular space, the reality is it's at the very beginning of the maturity curve for that particular space. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. The objective really was to think about what are the marketing practices today? What is it that is happening as a result of those marketing practices? How is that impacting the environment that we're living in, the way that consumers think about marketers? How is it making it more difficult for marketers? Why is it that's the way that things are? And what is it that's changing? And therefore, what is the opportunity for us as marketing professionals in order to create more value for ourselves and for the businesses we work for, and how can we make the buyer experiences better for the customers that we serve? Thank you very much, and have a great day.